keeping the kingdom united. As a yes vote on the independence of Scotland looks a distinct possibility, supporters of the Union are pushing back. But can Scots be convinced to stay in the Union at this late stage? The future of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the programme. In Doha, I'm Adrian Finnegan. The campaign to decide Scotland's future has entered its final stage. A new poll has put the Yes campaign, a vote for independence, narrowly ahead for the first time. Until now, some have accused the Westminster Parliament of complacency over the vote. But this poll seems to have changed things. It's energised the debate across the UK. And the British Chancellor, as the Finance Minister is known in the UK, has been forced to announce a plan that he says will give Scots more power over their own affairs if they remain within the Union. But those backing Scottish independence say it's too little, too late, and the Chancellor's proposals lack credibility. Before we get into our discussion, Al Jazeera's Lawrence Lee tells us what's at stake.
At this point, there's absolutely no mistaking what you can only call panic inside Westminster and inside the No to Independence campaign. There are crisis meetings going on at the moment with all the three main Westminster parties, Labour, the Liberals and the ruling Conservatives, to try to work out exactly what they can do to try to stem this. And you have to say, frankly, a lot of this is only their fault, because for so many months, quite smugly in some ways, they were saying that the No to Independence campaign was so far ahead, some 20 points ahead, that the Scots would be crazy to try to vote and they couldn't have the pound and they couldn't join the European Union and all these things. Well, that's turned out not to be a given, hasn't it? Because over the course of August into September now, the trajectory for yes to independence has gone gradually up until the first poll on Sunday, which said that they were on 51% and no was on 49%. We will see with more polling this week whether that was a blip, but certainly it looks like it's a trend now. And the question really is, what on earth can the Westminster parties do to try to change the Scots' mind? Because they're talking here about things like a constitutional crisis. The Prime Minister, David Cameron, could potentially have to resign. It calls into question what happens to the national general elections next year if by 2016 Scotland has gone into independence, what the rest of the UK's relationship is with the European Union. All these things are basically terrifying prospects for the Westminster political elite. And even if at this point no actually claws it back and wins, you have to say that if almost 50% of Scots are voting to leave what is supposed to be one of the wealthiest and most successful countries in the world, it does raise a question about the level of democracy that Westminster offers to the Scots.
Well, this referendum will, of course, decide the future of Scotland, but it will also decide, as Lawrence was saying there, the future of the United Kingdom. A little background here. The union between Scotland and England, together with Wales, was formed 307 years ago. At the moment, Scotland is governed, for the most part, by Westminster in London. But the Scottish Government does have some control over things like education, policing and transport. When Scots go to the polls on September 18th, they'll be asked one simple question: should Scotland be an independent country? Well, to discuss this, we're joined by our three guests today. From Glasgow, Tony Giuliano, Head of Sectoral Groups at Yes Scotland. From London, we've got with us Carl Miller, researcher at Demos and specialist on social media and public opinion. And also from Glasgow, Michael Mara, Head of Strategic Planning for the Better Together campaign. Tony, the outcome of this vote still far from certain. This poll on Sunday may be wrong given the margin of error, but there has been a gradual shift in opinion, a move towards a yes vote. What does that tell us?
Well, absolutely. You're absolutely correct. Scotland is on a journey, on quite an incredible journey towards independence. We've had a real renaissance, if we can call it that, here in Scotland, of people engaged in public opinion, people interested, people wanting to know more about Scotland's wealth and what we could do with that wealth if we're an independent country. We've had halls packed right across the country, window posters, people campaigning, people getting involved, people who have never been involved in politics before. There is a real renaissance going on in Scotland, and all of a sudden, 2 years into this campaign, the Westminster elite have figured out that this campaign is happening and are desperately trying to pull a rabbit out of a bag. But it's not going to happen. It's certainly not going to wash if they think that with 10 days to go, the people of Scotland will be fooled into believing that there will be more powers. There were no new powers mentioned in the Queen's speech. And there were no new powers mentioned in any of the TV debates that we've had over the past few weeks. So the cat is out the bag, I'm afraid.
All right.
And if Westminster and Better Together think that they can fool Scotland in this way, I think they're wrong.
OK, I just want to pin this down. This isn't, from what you're saying, about Scottish nationalism here. It's about political participation, democracy, people feeling that they can have a decision, have a say in decisions that affect them.
Absolutely. I mean, at the moment there is a democratic deficit in Scotland. We have Tory governments in Westminster that we don't elect, who are giving us things like the bedroom tax, like privatisation of the Royal Mail, things that we don't vote for. When Scotland's future is in Scotland's hands, we will be able to make the choices, shape policies that best suit the needs of the Scottish people. And this incredible renaissance that I'm talking about, that we're seeing all across Scotland, is something that we should all be proud of. Seeing people so engaged and wanting to know more and wanting to be in control of their country's future, not governed by an unelected House of Lords that doesn't mean anything to anybody in Scotland.
Michael Mara, can the Stay Together campaign reverse the momentum towards a yes vote at this late stage?
Well, 10 days out from the poll, we do know that certainly Scotland will have its say. You know, Tony's talking about the people are empowered, and they will have the power on a week on Thursday. We absolutely believe that we will win that majority on Thursday because of the strength of the proposition that we have, which is to have substantially more powers for the Scottish Parliament within the stability of the UK. Now, Tony says that that hasn't been talked about before. It absolutely has. It's been mentioned in both TV debates between the leaders of both campaigns. All parties that we're talking about have set out proposals before. Now what we're looking to get is a firm timetable that people can trust. And you have to remember that the SNP were saying this before Labour delivered a Scottish Parliament for Scotland in 1999 through legislation at Westminster. They said it again before the Calman proposals were passed in the Scotland Act that this wouldn't happen. They did happen, and these powers will happen. It's a cast iron guarantee. We know more powers are on the way, and there'll be more powers to follow. So you can have the best of both worlds. You can take the massive risks that come that are incumbent with the yes vote.
You talk about these powers, more powers to come. What can the British government do at this late stage to offer the Scots genuine incentives to stay? I mean, the main Westminster parties haven't even agreed a plan between them about which further powers should be devolved if Scotland stays.
Yeah, well, all three parties have set out substantial new powers that they believe are in the best interests of the country. I think this week we're going to see a firm timetable that we know will actually deliver a firm package of powers for Scotland. But that is on one side of the ledger. We have to be equating that to the ledger on the other side. I mean, look today. I think this, if we're believing anything about today, this is the day that the referendum got real. There have been millions of people engaging in it, as Tony says, to great effect in Scotland. But now, when the opinion polls have narrowed, the markets are reacting. We lost 1.5, I believe, billion pounds of RBS's share value, which is taxpayers' money.
0.4%.
This is just a foretaste. It's a foretaste of 0.4% of a lot of money. Is a lot of money. You know, this is an impact. It's an impact that is going to impact on the money that we have to spend on public service.
Perhaps George Osborne should do what he should do as a responsible Chancellor.
Tony, go ahead.
Perhaps George Osborne should do what he should do as a responsible Chancellor, and instead of denying that there will be a currency union, which is exactly what's creating this problem, he should do what's in the best interests of not just Scotland but the rest of the UK. I mean, this idea.
There is absolutely no sense that this instability is caused by the fact that the currency union that is being ruled out, because it's not in the interests of Scotland or the rest of the UK, is causing this instability. What we're looking at here, when we talk about
this is hedge fund, the hedge fund speculation.
90% of this RBS's business is out with Scotland. It cannot be based in Scotland if that is to be the case.
0.4 variation against the dollar caused by hedge fund speculation is nothing to do with the fact that we're not putting our arguments forward for a currency union. It's to do with the fact that the UK Chancellor is being utterly irresponsible.
All right, gentlemen, currency union is something that I want to discuss a little later as we get into this discussion. Before we get too bogged down, though, in the minutiae, I want to bring in Carl in London to talk about, Carl, what we can learn from social media about what people are thinking about this vote on both sides of the border, both in the UK as a whole and in Scotland, and the issues surrounding it.
Well, thank you, Adrian. I think we can see a really important character of the debate, which is actually being demonstrated right now in front of our eyes, which is that this is one of the worst-tempered debates that we've ever seen, and it's one which is so important, and yet where so few facts and figures are actually agreed upon by any of the parties contesting it. So what we see on social media actually is a real surge in actual anti-politics. People don't feel like that either of the campaigns are actually giving them the information that they need to make a clear-sighted choice about the future of themselves, their family and their nation. And I think that's incredibly worrying. We have to set this campaign, I think, in a much broader context of anti-politics. And that Tony's already used that immortal phrase, the Westminster elite. And I think one of the real successes that the Yes campaign has made is in basically managing to voice and articulate a real resentment with politics in general and with politicians in general. Over the last 50 years, we've seen that membership in political parties is falling. We've seen turnout in elections, I don't think this one, but in general, are falling. And trust in politicians is falling. Right now, we trust politicians less than we trust bankers or estate agents. 80% of us don't trust politicians at all. So I think that there's been this enormous kind of froth and bluster with this debate, an enormous amount of facts and counterfacts flying around. And actually what we can really see on social media now is a really clear demand from people to truly know the nature of the decision that they're making. And I don't think they feel that either of the campaigns is being honest and open with them about what actually the nature of the vote and what voting yes or no would actually mean for them.
But Carl, is social media representative of public opinion as a whole?
It's not, of course, and Twitter, which is the platform which we analyse at great scale, certainly doesn't represent the view of the British of the Scottish electorate. We know that Twitter is broadly young and broadly liberal, and actually the Yes campaign has had a clear lead on social media for quite some time. But I think it does show something which I think is a more general truth, which is that if you sit back and just listen to how most people are engaging with this debate, actually they're not cheering for any of the candidates within it. We sat back and we watched how Twitter reacted to both the referendum debates, and actually there were overwhelming boos for both Darling and Salmond. People don't feel that either of the two candidates were being straight and honest with them. But actually the difficulty was that both candidates really had their best moments when they managed to skewer the other one on a particular point of fact. So whether it was about sterling zone or employment powers, really, we saw that Darling and Salmond were really best able at demonstrating to the electorate why the other one wasn't telling the truth. But they weren't being seen, I think, by social media really at all to be telling the truth themselves. And that to me is deeply worrying, because this really it raises a really important question about how we go about politics in this country and how we give people choice. And ironically, really, the general sentiments which I think the Yes campaign are managing to really articulate really well, the fact there is a lack of choice in Westminster, the fact there is a Westminster political club, the fact that most people don't think that their voice is being heard in making the decisions which really importantly structure their lives. Actually, that's a view which is widely held by the electorate south of the border as well.
OK, well, let's put that to Michael Mara. To what extent is this move towards a Yes vote a result of not just Scottish disillusionment, but, as we say, across the entire country, with Westminster and the decisions made there going back to, what, the Thatcher era and beyond?
Yeah, I mean, of course, that's a trend that we've all observed over years now, and it's not certainly limited to the UK either. You know, people trust in politicians and political processes internationally have decreased. Now, I think that all sense that, we're aware of it, and I think that that's part of the reason that I think that there's an increasing awareness and recognition that power needs to be taken as close as possible in the right appropriate level where it can be best used in people's favour, and that's why we're proposing further devolution powers over to be devolved to Scotland, and that's really where we think that more decisions should be taken. It's a compelling case, but within clearly the stability and the opportunities that a broader union affords.
All right, for the benefit of our
Adrian,
international...
I think this goes to show...
but please, Tony.
I think this goes to show... It goes to show that Westminster and Better Together have absolutely no respect whatsoever for the people of Scotland if they think that with 10 days to go, with no new powers in the Queen's speech, with no Devo Max on the ballot paper, only now that we have one poll showing that we're in the lead, all of a sudden the panic at Westminster, what are we going to do, which new powers are we going to give, that's just simply not going to wash. We've been here before when the 1979 referendum, but the people of Scotland simply will not be fooled
this
again.
Isn't true. I think you will also.
Well, no, it is true. Well, name three powers.
If you remember campaigning in 1999, did you campaign in 97? Did you campaign in 97?
We can't all talk across each other. We're going to get nowhere. Michael, you have your answer. I know Carl wants to come in as well. Michael.
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge assertion from Tony that these powers haven't been laid out. All three main parties have laid out significant new powers for Scotland. But Tony's pretending that these things don't happen, that Westminster isn't open to change. And that's just blatantly untrue. The Parliament we're talking about, gaining more powers in Westminster, whether it be further devolution or independence, was established in 1997 in a referendum. I mean, Tony, I would imagine, would have campaigned in that referendum to bring it to happen. So this idea about going back to 1979 and saying that things weren't delivered then. Not only did we have that Parliament, it was further strengthened through the Calman Commission. Yes, we have been here before. We've been here before delivering more powers for Scotland, and we're going to do it again.
Carl, why should it matter to the Union that Scotland stays? What does the rest of the UK stand to lose if Scotland goes?
Well, I mean, I think there is that touches on everything from poetry and sense of identity and nationhood all the way through to economics and jobs. But I think there is a common complaint here, which this debate already is showing, which is that both the campaigns are shouting over each other in an attempt to try and reach the voters that they need to in order to win this. That they're not giving any voter a clear sense of what it actually means when they step in that booth in just a few days' time to make this decision. We are living through, right now, one of the biggest political moments in any of our lives. And I cannot believe right now that there is still so many disputed facts actually about what it would mean for the UK, what it would mean for someone from England, what it would mean from someone from Scotland, for Scotland to go independent. Literally questions of billions of pounds.
Absolutely, which is why George Osborne should come
are still up in the air.
Instead of suggesting...
Hang on, please, Tony, go ahead.
Can I finish?
Yeah, Carl, please.
You're absolutely correct, which is why George Osborne should stop bluffing and creating uncertainty in the markets and start laying out exactly the plans for a post-yes vote
it's not
for
just
a formal currency union. The idea that he's going to turn around... The idea that he's going to turn around to businesses in England and say to them, do you know what, you're going to have to pay £500 million a year in transaction costs to do trade with our second most important trading partner. Our balance of payments are down because oil revenues will not be counted in that anymore. And Scotland has just become independent, taking all of its resources and not a penny of its debt. That is a fantasy position, not even unrealistic. It's utter fantasy. It makes no economic sense for the UK.
Michael, you can come in just a second. Carl, you briefly finish your point.
Sorry, yeah, just to briefly finish, what I would really love to see in these crucial last days is, and this is perhaps a fantasy of my own, but for the campaigns to actually come together to agree a series of facts which they don't dispute about what actually going independent for Scotland would really mean. I think that every politician here owes it to the Scottish electorate to actually try and be straight with them about the facts here.
Okay.
I mean, it's really unacceptable how a voter can go into that booth and not know whether it's got £500 in his pocket one way or another, whether they're going to be part of the EU or sterling zone or whatever. I mean, there's too many hanging questions, and I think that's just not what the product of a sophisticated political
we encourage George Osborne to sit around the table and give us the answers.
I think that process that, I mean, Tony's talking about a currency union or lack of. What we know is that as much as Alex Salmond is seeking, as he calls it, a sovereign mandate in Scotland to decide what the currency might be, he cannot bind what would then be a foreign country in that regard. And we also know that the opinion polls and across, not just political activists, not politicians, but opinion across England is quite clear that actually if it's not in the interests of England, then it shouldn't happen. Now, Alex Salmond cannot bind people to that regime. But what he also cannot do and refuses to do is actually lay out what a plan B would be. If, and he asserts that it was a bluff, and it is not, but if he was it to be a bluff, if not a bluff, what is his plan B? What would he do? He refuses to tell us. I mean, that is an extraordinary situation that anybody watching this would agree that 9 days now out from polling day, that we still don't have clarity on these issues. I entirely agree with our colleague from Demos.
We have 3 plan Bs. We have set out the plan Bs, Michael. You know that.
Bs.
Yeah, I mean, your strategy has failed.
As ludicrous as
your scaremongering has failed. 2 years of scaremongering, and it has backfired.
Tony,
change your strategy. It's
Tony,
not working.
Tony, talking on this issue.
Tony, instead of shouting about this issue, perhaps you might want to tell us which plan B comes first.
All right, Tony. Before we look, we're getting bogged down in minutiae here. Tony, I just want to put a point to you. We talk about this this currency union that Scotland's leaders say there would be, that it would share the pound after independence. Wouldn't a currency union mean that an independent Scotland would still be beholden to fiscal policy and decisions made in London?
No,
when you look at how some European nations have suffered through the downturn by not being able to control interest rates, for example.
Look, we're not going to make a comparison between countries in the Eurozone, between Greece and Germany, and 2 countries which will have a very, very, very similar economy. As I pointed out earlier on, it doesn't make... Michael can talk about opinion polls as much as he likes. If you look at anything that happens across the world, it's economics that pushes the agenda, and it doesn't make any economic sense for the United Kingdom not to have a formal currency union because of business,
so
because
Nobel
of the
Prize
balance
winner
of payments,
this morning, Paul
because of the
Krugman,
debt,
stating exactly the opposite to what you're saying.
It doesn't make any economic sense. It simply doesn't add up, and that's why Michael's strategy is not working. And that's why we're seeing the Yes campaign moving forward to over 51%.
Are you saying that an independent Scotland wouldn't be economically viable?
I'm saying that on the basis of the plans presented by the SNP in their white paper, no, it wouldn't, because the building blocks that they're putting forward, that they're presenting, don't make any sense. They don't make sense. They're proposing a currency union that would not be in the interests of Scotland or the rest of the UK. That's quite clear. On that proposition of the white paper, it is not beholden. Now, I have to say, that proposition, 600 odd pages as it was, there's 1 page in that document that actually illustrates what the fiscal position of Scotland would be. And it's already entirely out of date, because the oil figures were not what they thought they would be, or not what they hoped they would be. So we have to be quite clear.
Where's your white paper?
I raised there briefly, and this is a proposition where the burden of proof lies with the people who want to make the change. What we're saying is that we want to maintain the United Kingdom and have further powers within it. That's a clear proposition. I think.
Give us the powers. Tell us what the powers are.
Okay, all right, Carl. You say that people are confused about the issues. They don't know what they're voting for when they step into that booth next Thursday. What do the parties have to do in the very short remaining time before that vote to clarify all of these issues, to make sure people know what they're voting for?
Absolutely. So, of course, just as a footnote, this is a long-term process, and we really have to begin thinking hard about how we start closing the gap between the people and their representatives. I mean, this is something close to a crisis of mainstream politics, I think we're living through right now. In the next 10 days, of course, there's actually, at this point, very little that either campaign could do. As I said, one thing I would really love to see is a clarification of facts which both campaigns don't dispute, and then perhaps also then laying out exactly what the disputes really are and why they're the case. I mean, one of the most heavily retweeted tweets that we saw in the referendum debate was an exhortation to people to not listen to any politician and to just research the fact themselves, and that's the most dangerous outcome of all.
Carl, I'm thinking about what happened.
Outcome of all is if.
Yeah, I'm thinking about what happened in. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but what happened in Quebec. Is this momentum, do you think, reversible at this late stage? Is Scotland going to vote for independence next week?
I truly believe it's on a knife edge, really, genuinely on a knife edge. I think there is I think this latest poll is likely to galvanise probably both sides. It's really hard to know who's going to really benefit from it. It's well evidenced in previous elections that there is a slight inertia, so we may see a small bounce in the no vote simply on election day. But I mean, this is now too close to call. And really it could swing either way. Gentlemen, there we're going to have to end the discussion. We're out of time. Many thanks indeed. Tony Giuliano,
thank you.
From Yes Scotland.
Thank you.
Michael Mara from the Better Together campaign, and Carl Miller from Demos.
Thank you very much.
Please let us know your thoughts on this debate. You can leave your comments on facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. We're also on Twitter. Tweet us at AJ Inside Story. In Doha, I'm Adrian Finnegan. Thanks for watching. I'll see you again. Bye for now.